Welcome into episode 58 of the Level Flight podcast. My name is Connor. I'm joined by Brian and Elliott today. And we've got a lot to talk about. The Jets had a 4-game winning streak. It came to an end last night against the San Jose Sharks. We're recording this Wednesday morning, and they play the Kings tonight. So maybe we'll get some content out on that, get our thoughts maybe to you Friday morning. But in the meantime, guys, how are we doing?
Tired from last night. I went to bed before the end of it and then managed to turn the game back on to see the end and the Sharks score with like 4 minutes left. Yeah, it's I don't like the West Coast games. I'm too old for this.
I will not agree with that motion this week as much as I agreed last week with Connor. I don't mind the late games. It's just when I'm tired, I'm tired. I watched the end of the game. We'll get into it. Brian, would you like to tell everybody why you decided to go to sleep in the middle of the third period?
Well, we'll talk about this later as well. But I had a personal bet with myself that if I saw Logan Stanley one more time on my screen, I was going to go to bed. And he wasn't even on the ice, but they did like a close up on the bench, and I'm like, all right, it's meant to be. Tuck myself in. Good night, Moon.
Yeah. We were talking in our text chat last night about the late starts, and we can get into that maybe later because the Jets play again tonight at 9:30 Central. But I'm a big fan. I actually prefer 9:30 starts over 6 p.m. starts. I know that's a hot take, but when they play like New York and it starts at 6, cuts into dinner. There's like just things going on where like you'll miss a period, or I got to drive my little brother to hockey, or whatever. Like there's just things happening at 6 o'clock. At 9:30, everyone's in bed, and the only thing you can do is watch the Jets game. And that's my entire case for why I prefer the late starts over the early starts.
Good case.
Yes, thank you. And then I tell people that, and they all go, "Well, it's because you're young. When you get older, you'll hate it." And I'm not disputing that. But
believe me,
for right now,
listen, I've never felt more.
Are you trying to call Brian old? Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Can't
exactly.
Listen, I do have the the age range on you guys, so
yeah.
If you were unfamiliar, I am the oldest on this show. To our listeners, you'll find me in your local retirement home, and both of my knees no longer work.
We're getting there. My knee was giving me issues this past, winter. But,
when the weather changed.
I'm not even gonna get started. I'm a former athlete. My body aches constantly. It's been pushing.
Anyways, let's get into the professional athletes. Let's talk about them. The Winnipeg Jets. Let's start with the Colorado Avalanche game. This was one of the best games of the year for Winnipeg. They beat them 4-2, the Avalanche on the road. Gives them, the leg up with initially the leg up on a tiebreaker. They're going to play Colorado again this week, actually, Saturday night, 6 p.m., Canada Life Center. That'll be a fun one. A good rematch for these two teams that are battling at the top of the Central. But this game specifically, Kyle Connor, we'll get into that in a second. But in this game, he scores 2 goals. The top line continued to roll. It was Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers at the time. Their analytics were great. They were putting up numbers. Josh Morrissey scores the game winner. He had a fantastic game. There was really nothing to not like from this game. Logan Stanley got burnt pretty bad on that goal by Nathan MacKinnon. But outside of that, I thought he actually had a pretty good game. And Murat Atesh of The Athletic had a good tweet saying, like, if your assessment of a player is that he got posterized in transition by Nathan MacKinnon, then maybe like it's just you put that away, because you watch McKinnon's highlights, there's millions of defensemen he's done that too. But I digress. Brian, what were your thoughts from the 4-2 win over the Avalanche on Thursday?
It's one of those ones where I think we were talking about it at the time. That first period felt like nothing. It's like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then as the game wore on, like it just felt like the Jets sort of had that extra step. And it ended up being a really good finish, and seeing what they did with going up, fairly quickly too. Like it felt like everything was kind of in a quick little burst there. But no, getting that type of offense from your top players is good when it's against these top teams. Like You need your best guys to show up in the hardest situations, and there they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the Jets played well in the second period. I will actually disagree. I think they reeled quite a bit in the third period, but it wasn't one of those games where we've seen where the Jets kind of just go, all right, Connor Hellebuck, you figure us out of this problem.
Oh,
we're just playing so much better.
Sorry, you lagged a little bit there.
There's a non-zero chance that we got none of what you had just said, but you know.
Which was weird because I think, Connor, you were the only one that lagged on my screen. But anyway, either way, I'll rephrase that for everybody. Normally the Jets are pretty good about just kind of throwing the game to Connor Hellebuck in the third period when they're up. And I don't think they really did that in this game. It just, as much as it looked like it really didn't feel that way. It felt like the Jets were trying to generate. They were trying to make plays offensively, and it just looked like the Avs were the better team in the third. And they got, I wouldn't even say bailed out by Connor Hellebuck, because it didn't even look like they were trying to have Hellebuck bail them out, which I think is a good new thing that they're trying to do. But he did steal them the win in the third period.
Yeah, Hellebuck was fantastic. It was another game where you feel more confident with him in net now. The first couple of games of the year, you were feeling uneasy every time the opponents would have a good chance because Hellebuck was struggling. Now it's like the Jets could give up 35 shots and they're fine. Brian, you alluded to the nothing first period. And there seems to be this weird pattern where either the first periods that the Jets play are nothing, or they just get absolutely pummeled. As we'll talk about in the Sharks game, it happened in the Hurricanes game. With it, just Brossoit he likes getting a lot of shots early, so they give him what he wants and they give up 15 shots in the first 10 minutes. But there's these first periods where you watch and the first period ends and you go, I could not tell you one thing that happened in that period. That was just the most boring hockey I've ever seen. Or they just get absolutely shelled, but the game is still tied or like 1-1, or they're winning in the Hurricanes case. Very, very weird trend to keep an eye on. But this night against the Avalanche, the three of us were out at the illegal curve watch party at BP Taylor. It was a really fun time, seeing a lot of people. People came up to us, and we're talking about, Level Flight podcast. We were telling people about that. Brian and I were at the Winnipeg Sports Talk event the night before, telling people about LFP, getting the word out. But yeah, legal curve watch party. Love those guys. Love the post-game shows. Very fun time at BP and a good crowd. Really good turnout and just a fun time. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have anything to add, but yeah, that was really fun.
Just thanks to Legal Curve for having this out. That's about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the Anaheim game. Obviously the Anaheim game comes with a bit of an asterisk. They win. It's their fourth straight. They're atop the Central Division. Everything should be sunshine and rainbows. But Kyle Connor exited the game in the second period with a right knee injury. Did not look good. If you compare it to the Gabriel Velarde injury, which a lot of people are doing, knee injury, fair enough. Gabriel Velarde gets hurt and is able to skate off. You cannot say the same about Kyle Connor. He gets hit in the right knee. Is immediately down, holding his knee for a couple minutes. Trainers come, he gets helped off, no weight on his knee. And I'll let you guys go on the hit first, before we get into the game. I don't even know if we really want to talk about the game. They beat a team they should have, whatever. They scored 4 unanswered in the third. That was kind of cool. But outside of that, the Kyle Connor hit, Elliott, I'll let you go first. What were your initial thoughts when it happened, and now seeing replays, what do you think of the hit?
So for me, when I first saw the hit, my first thought was, okay, that looked bad on impact, but it also looked to me, when I first watched it, looked like a hit, right? Mm-hmm. When you watch it in full time, it looks like Strome hit him, missed, and did something he probably shouldn't have, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, it didn't look good. They keep playing, they play on. And then I kind of noticed that I was like, oh, that didn't look good. And then they kind of keep playing. And then I'm like, okay, now where's Kyle Connor? Like, he didn't get up. And that's kind of when quote unquote panic started to set in, because as we know, Kyle Connor's been pretty much a tank, right? Like he's taken some pretty big hits and he's been pretty good about staying in the lineup, staying in and around the team. Like he hasn't missed too much time. And then he doesn't get up, and then they pan over and they've got the trainer out, and it doesn't look good. When I rewatched that replay, to me, and I tweeted out on my own social media account after, I think I quote tweeted your tweet, Connor. But I tweeted out saying, this looks more like, to me, it looked more like an intentional hit, first of all. But the way that Ryan Strome hit him, it looked more like a slew foot. It looked like he was trying to get his leg up underneath Kyle Connor to trip him up, and instead full on like went knee on knee with him. And obviously, as we know, especially if there is an aggressor in a knee on knee hit, normally the aggressor isn't really going to get too bothered by it because he's prepared for it and he's the one providing the impact. But yeah, to me, the way that played out on replay, it looked obviously intentional, and it looked a little bit more like a slew foot to me, which could have signaled to the league that it wasn't an accident and probably deserved some suspension time. But I mean, I don't even want to get into that, because then I'll get into a discussion about what Draymond Green did last night to the Phoenix Suns and Yusuf Nurkic, and we don't need to do that.
Very fair. Brian?
I agree with the fact that it looked awful. I don't agree with the fact that it looked more like a slew foot, because I feel like the prerequisite for a slew foot is that it comes from behind and you lift the foot up from behind. That to me is just a bad knee. And like Neil Pionk was suspended for a similar play against the Leafs 2 years ago. Like almost like you can see a little lean from the knee to lead with that. And that's exactly what Strome did. And he doesn't even get a fine. And I think with that is this week alone, the player safety department has lost any and all credibility that they had built up early in the season with some decent calls, where it's like they don't have any consistency whatsoever. And I honestly think that you can, from that, especially the one angle that you can really see the knee hit Connor's knee, you can quite literally see that he's leading with that knee. Like if you lead with the knee, there's intent. He also he missed with a chicken wing. So he's clearly intending to make contact with either his elbow, not allowed, or with his knee, also not allowed. And he like, I don't know. It's just, there's no real sort of consistency here, and there is a precedent that can be followed, especially like even in the Jets case, like seeing Neil Pionk getting suspended for a similar play on Timothy Liljegren against the Leafs a few years back, or Rasmus Sandin. And Sandin was out for a few months. Why does that get 2 games and this one doesn't? Because same sort of injury, what we're probably looking at.
Yeah. And before I get into my thoughts on the hit, I will say Mike McIntyre had this report that Connor's knees, hopefully a 6 to 8 week recovery timeline. However, there's still some further evaluation pending, which could alter that. He says we'll get an official update from Rick Bowness. Rick Bowness spoke and said that they're sending him back to Winnipeg to be evaluated by the team doctors. So the way I interpreted that tweet is that they got him evaluated in San Jose with San Jose's team doctors, like players do when they get hurt on the road. And they said, you're hurt, 6 to 8 week timeline, but the Jets just want to be ultra careful with their best offensive player leading like in the race for the Rocket Richard. So they're like, you know what? If it's 6 to 8 weeks, we don't need you for this road trip. Go back home. We'll get you evaluated by our own doctors, and then we'll come to a full conclusion. It's just another opinion because no one expects, like it wasn't going to be, Kyle Connor might be a game time decision for LA tonight. Like it was never going to be that. So just getting as many professional opinions on it, why not, right? But 6 to 8 weeks would be a massive win. Anything short of season ending, and I know that sounds dumb. He's out for 6 weeks. That's not a win. That's not good. But the way the play happened, the way Kyle Connor's never injured, and yet he's sitting there holding his knee for like over 2 minutes, can't put any weight on it. Like I said, Velarde was able to skate off on his own power, just went right off the ice. The way it looked, you thought, like, I don't know about you guys, but running through my mind was like torn ACL, torn MCL, all these knee injuries that you hear of in these in football, most notably. But it's 6 to 8 weeks would be a win. His season's not over.
Like, that would effectively bring him back end of January into early February.
Right.
Yeah.
And so effectively, that was exactly what I was going to say, because we know
Ehlers from last year.
You know, like come February, we're going to just hear, oh, if this is in fact the timeline, which I'm assuming we're going to look at something, you know, along that lines.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't change, we're going to spend all of January hearing about how he's their trade deadline acquisition.
Yeah. Again, going through that.
I want to bring something up with that later on about another topic, but I don't want to allude to it yet because I think it could be a fun topic. But
sure, let's save that. I'll get to quickly my thoughts on the hit. I was shocked that it wasn't suspended at all, because there's this whole debate of, well, do you suspend the intent or do you suspend the act, right? Like Jacob Trouba, 2 hands a guy to the head. I'm sure a lot of people saw that clip. He slashed a guy in the head. And what, he just got a fine because the guy wasn't hurt? But what if he nailed him in the neck and the guy, like, I don't know, strained his neck really bad and he was out months? Then would he be suspended? It's like, do you suspend the result, or do you suspend what actually happened, which is a guy slashed someone in the head, or a guy needs someone and got a game misconduct out of it? I don't like this whole, well, they suspended him, or they tossed him from the game. If Kyle Connor's not hurt, then no harm, no foul. It's like, well, he need him, and he's gonna be hurt for a long time, and that should be suspended. Regardless, if Kyle Connor was in the lineup tonight, that hit still should be suspended for 2 games, because whether he's fine after it or he tears his MCL, it shouldn't matter. Like, the play happened. Whether or not he's out for the season or is back the very next game shouldn't determine how or whether or not a player is suspended. That's my take.
Just in now.
Yeah,
the Jets have officially placed Kyle Connor on injured reserve.
Okay.
And have recalled Dominic Toninato from the Manitoba Moose on an emergency basis, which is interesting because they already have 12 forwards, I think, that are active, don't they?
Yeah, they have 12. They went
which
11
leads me to believe that there's either like an illness or an injury with another forward as well. Because
maybe
it's also, they went 11-7 again last night, which we'll talk about later again.
Yeah.
But if they're going 11-7 and then doing an emergency recall on a forward, I'm curious as to sort of where everyone's at. But yeah.
Before we get into all that, they did go 11-7 last night. They played the Sharks. They lost. We'll get into that game in a second. First, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, DraftKings. So stick around and we will be right back.
Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023, all rights reserved.
And welcome back into episode 58 of the Level Flight podcast. Thanks once again to DraftKings for sponsoring this episode. And the Winnipeg Jets last night lost to the San Jose Sharks. Would have been 5 straight wins, but they dropped a 2-1 game to the Sharks. First game without Kyle Connor. He only scored 1 goal. Brendan Dillon is the only goal scorer. Not a great look. They go 11-7. Their power play goes 0 for 5. So there's a lot to talk about in this game in terms of those two aspects. But Brian, I'll get your thoughts. What kind of was the most disappointing thing from this loss? Obviously, the Sharks have been better lately, but they're still a team that you got to beat.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna start with something positive, and then go into the negative. I'm gonna start by saying we've now got 2 really good starts from Laurent Brossoit in a row.
Right. Yes.
And not to shamelessly plug myself here, but I put in an article yesterday, so on Tuesday, whenever you're hearing this. And I talked about how consistency for him is his biggest foe over his career, essentially. He has never put together back-to-back really good seasons. And to take that even further, he's never put back-to-back seasons together with a 900 save percentage. Either he's over 900 or at like 895 or lower. Like there is no consistency there. And we had already seen it to start the year where he was just not all there with his first like 5 starts. And now he's got 2 really good ones in a row. Unfortunately, he couldn't be rewarded with the win last night. But that's the positive I took out of it. The negative, though, I'm just sick and tired, especially in this situation. Why the hell are you going 11-7 on night 1 of a back-to-back when it's very clear that, you're already a tired team, your forward group is hurting already, and you're bringing in a guy who is not going to move the needle anywhere positive? Usually it's going to go somewhere to the negative side of things. Like I don't get it. I really don't. Like you're only making your defense group unstable. You're increasing minutes for your forward group and especially your top guys going into a harder game against the LA Kings on a back-to-back. Like what are you doing here?
Yeah. Elliott.
It's just a little silly. I'm gonna just keep going with the 11-7 thing. So you bring Schmidt in after being a healthy scratch. So this is his first game back, and then you make Logan Stanley the 7th defenseman. When did Logan Stanley become the 6th and or 7th defenseman at all times? Like I don't get it. I wouldn't mind if that 7th defenseman was Dylan. I almost said Dylan Sandberg. Declan Chisholm, because I don't mind what Chisholm brings to the lineup. I don't really think Logan Stanley does anything for this Jets team. I really don't think he does anything. Now, the only thing that I will say is the reason why he might be getting games, and there's the whole, Winnipeg and Philadelphia might be making a deal because they're at each other's games, scouting and whatever. But fine. But do you have enough tape on him? Philadelphia has seen him, right? Like he's been. The funniest thing is most people, when you get into talking about players and year by year, normally at any sport, you need film from every year because most players change and they either get better or like get worse, essentially, right? You need film. I'm pretty sure you could pull up film from 3 years ago of Logan Stanley and it'll look the exact same.
The development curve is a straight line. Nothing has happened. Nothing has changed. If anything, I'm less impressed by him now. And out of that entire group, he's got the least amount of ice time in other years. And then he comes in, he plays a bunch of games, nothing changes. He has like 1 or 2 good games, gets hurt or something. And then we start again with like the whole, maybe they're shopping. If they were shopping him, he would have been either gone already or the rest of the league would have looked at him and said, I don't know if we have a spot for this guy because he's not an NHL defenseman. And I am firmly of the belief that he is not. I think he is maybe your number 8. Because like when you're looking at that group, I would much rather either Schmidt or Chisholm coming in. And then we're going to get into the whole Ville Heinola discourse again, because at some point or another, he'll be back in the next month. And we're doing it again, where it's once again Logan Stanley is getting ice time that he does not deserve. And he's had a couple of good games over this little stretch here, but we're also looking that actively his foot speed, his his decision making, it's costing the team. Like there was a moment last night where he had like a 9 full seconds to make a breakout pass from behind the net, and he just fired it right to the defense. Like you're going directly to the Sharks. Like you have 9 seconds to make a decision here.
Yeah.
You're behind your own net. There's no one pressuring you, and then you fire it right to the opposing team. Like, I'm sorry. Like, and I don't understand. Like, listen, I understand. I mean, probably gonna get the whole if why don't you coach the team situation here? But I don't understand how the coaching staff can look at this guy and say, yeah, that's the guy we want in the lineup every day. I don't know if it's a bonus thing, because I'll be real, we didn't see Logan Stanley when Scott Arniel was behind the bench. But clearly, and that's the thing, and bonus is doubling and tripling down. Every time someone asks him about him being in the lineup, he's like, oh, I like what I saw. I like what I saw. He had a really great game. And that came after a game too where he was just awful. Like, I don't understand the insistence on putting him in. And at this point, I also don't get the whole discourse of maybe they're shopping him for a deal. Like, no, I'm pretty sure this team is just too invested in this guy that they don't want to, make it seem like they failed.
Yeah. And the report came out from Bruce Garrioch, I think it was the Ottawa reporter for TSN. And he basically said that there have been offers and the Jets have turned them down. I'm pretty sure that was the report. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's pretty telling. If we're what, year 7, year 8 into this. And a big thing for me, and one place where I thought Logan Stanley provided value to this team, was penalty killing. And in years past, like last year, before his ankle injury, I actually thought that he was a serviceable 6th defenseman who was a good penalty killer. His foot speed was there. But I think since that ankle injury, his foot speed is just gone. It sucks. But for a guy who's 6'7", having an injury to the lower body when you're already struggling with foot speed is just tough. It's just tough to come back from. And then in this game against the Sharks, he's killing penalties and he has time to make a play, ice the puck. He gets ripped by, I think it was William Eklund. I think it was Eklund. And then the puck ends up back to Eklund, who scores the game winner on the one-timer. And it's tough to defend Logan Stanley this far into his career. The expectations are higher. I feel like, Brian, you said like you feel worse about him now. I think that's a product of the expectations on him being higher. He's now 25 years old and he's in his 8th year in the NHL, 7th year or of his career. Sorry, not in the NHL, but of his career. He should be the best version of himself as a player right now. The absolute best. At 25, you are the peak of your powers. That is Connor McDavid, 150-point season, like Sidney Crosby. Like this is like when you are in your prime, the start of your prime, 25 years old.
There is a phenomenal study of the NHL aging curve. I think it's in Stat Shot, is the book that it's in. And it shows that it does not matter, defenseman, forward, whatever. Essentially, once you hit 25, unless you're like a unicorn, like like a Crosby or an Ovechkin or like any of like those generational players, you are almost guaranteed to start being on your downswing. And I don't want to hear the whole, well, defensemen take longer. I'm like, no, some defensemen take longer and succeed. Most of them don't. Essentially, once you hit 25, it's either you're in the NHL and you're going to stay there, or you've lost your chance and you're going to go, sit down in the AHL until people get hurt. Like that's the thing. Like it's usually you get to a point where the aging curve sets in, and it's one thing that really not many people can, compensate with. Like once you get older, either it's injuries or it's your foot speed or it's whatever. You getting older is natural, and it's going to happen is you're just going to have to mitigate that, and as a team you also have to be able to identify it. And 25 years old some big lumbering defenseman who doesn't really offer anything is not going to suddenly change his game and elevate it at any point past this point. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you think that, age 26, Logan Stanley is going to be, light years better than age 25, you are fooling yourself, and it is only hurting the team more. So yeah, the aging curve, defies all unless you're like a generational player. And let me tell you this, Logan Stanley is not.
Right.
What? He's not? Oh, man. That's unfortunate.
It
really sucks that not every single tall person is good at whatever. I'm even going to broaden this out to every sport. Not every tall person is the best at every sport that they play. Right? Yeah. Like it just because like he's not. I'm sorry. Logan Stanley is not Zdeno Chara. He's not Victor Hedman. He's not any of that. He's Logan Stanley, and he's gonna stay being Logan Stanley until like he doesn't have it. I don't know what it takes for this organization to just see that he doesn't have it. I get he was a project, and you're very committed to the project. I like project players are great. They're cool. The upside thing is fantastic. Logan Stanley, if he had figured out how to skate and he'd figured out how to speed up his skating.
If he figured out how to skate.
Well, okay, but
no, I get what you're saying.
I know, but can you guys also understand that it just sometimes looks like he's moving in quicksand? And there's sometimes where it just doesn't seem like he knows. Like there are actually times where he makes plays where I don't even barring the besides the Sharks game, there are times where he doesn't even look like he knows what he's doing or like he realizes where he is. I will use an example of the Sharks game. There was a play at one point. It didn't lead to a goal, but I can't remember what time of the game it was. But there was a scramble in front of the net. Brossoit had a right pad save. He threw it over in the right corner, and Logan Stanley picked up the puck. And it was a hot potato. Like he didn't even think of every other defenseman kind of would have picked it up, tried to go because he had space to go around the net, kind of take time to make a play. Nope, he picked that puck up and fired it right to whoever the right defenseman was, right onto the tape. Wasn't even a proper clearing attempt up the middle. He threw it right to the boards, right to the defenseman. It was right under the defenseman's stick. Yeah, literally. And whoever it was walked in and took a slap shot. And obviously Brossoit made the save, and it didn't cost the Jets anything. But it just feels like more and more he's costing this team games by either making a silly play defensively or he can't keep up. And again, like I said, I love project players. The idea of upside is cool, but when it doesn't work, you need to realize it's not working and give up. Because what are you going to do when Ville Heinola comes back? What would you have done if Declan Chisholm had 3 great games? Or what are you going to do if Nate Schmidt goes on a point streak for 4 games and he's got 2 goals and 4 assists and he's got 6 points in his last 4 games or something? Then you have to play those guys. And when Ville comes back, you have to give him a shot. He won the spot at a camp. You can't just go, oh, well, you got injured, so see you later. Bye-bye. We'll see you in with the Moose. You can't do that. That's not that sets the precedent for Ville, which we already know how Ville feels about playing with the Moose at this point in his career. And it also sets the precedent for other players that, well, if you win a spot, it doesn't matter, especially if you get injured, because you're going to have to defy more odds to stay in the lineup. It's just, at this point, it's just silly.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the decision to play him. And I think it breeds from you talked about it, how we didn't see it with Arneal. Bonus, I've talked about it before. His style of hockey, he's trying to win every game 2-1, right? And it works with a Vezina goaltender and a deep forward group and a veteran blue line that suppresses chances better than anyone else in the league, or up there in the top 5. But when you lose your top goal scorer and the guy that is solely responsible for the majority of your offense, going 11-7 and trying to win the game 2-1 seems interesting to me. You can fully lean into the defensive thing. That makes sense. but you need offense, and you got to score some goals. And I wrote a piece a few weeks ago, just kind of, it was a takeaways from their 4-game homestand, the one where it ended off with Carolina. And I wrote that they were bottom 5 in the league at that time in expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5, which is they're not generating enough offense. And now Kyle Connor's out, so you're not going to get bailed out when you get one rush chance in the entire period, and it's a Kyle Connor 2-on-1 and he roofs it over the goalie. You're not going to get bailed out by that anymore. Like when it's Mason Appleton coming down the wing, he's not as talented of a finisher as Kyle Connor is.
No. You gotta temper those. It's Adam Lowry to a Mason Appleton Ovechkin style 1-me one-timer on the 2-on-1.
Any fans on it?
I don't know. It's just they're not generating enough offense. It's really concerning without Kyle Connor. It's going to be really interesting to see how they play tonight against LA. Second night of a back-to-back. Your forwards retired because you went 11-7 last night and lost to the Sharks. And LA, the top team, or like a top 5 team in the NHL in generating chances 5-on-5. One of the best offensive teams in the league. So you're not going to win this game 2-1, and your forward group is tired. So good luck. Yeah. Hellebuyck's going to have to be great tonight. That's what I think. That take may age horribly. We'll see. You'll be listening to this tomorrow morning, so you'll know. But I think they're screwed tonight against LA. Let's talk into what do we want to move into here? We've got an outline. What do we want to talk about?
I think a good natural transition point here would be to kind of continue on that conversation and look at the internal options of where they're going to find any sort of, offense or just the ability to fill in that spot with Connor out.
Yeah.
Last night, it was Velarde and Ehlers on Scheifele's wing.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the rest of the lineup, you look at it and you go, I don't know how they're scoring.
Yeah. Like Morgan Barron's in the top 6 now. So it's Ehlers, Scheifele, Velarde, Perfetti, Nemesnikov, Barron, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, and then last night on the 4th line, Gustafsson and Iafallo. That would be AJF, Gustafsson, Iafallo if they went 12-6.
Or Toninato or whoever.
Or Toninato, yeah. But I'll start here. I think besides, like, Morgan Barron's been great, and I think he deserves that promotion into the top 6. But you need more from Alex Iafallo and Nino Niederreiter. Like Nino's been great. I more mean like you need him higher up in the lineup. Because that third line, let's be honest, it was great to start the year. It's almost just a black hole offensively now. They're not really scoring at the pace that they did to start it, which was unsustainable. We all knew it. But it's time, like we're past the point where it's like, oh, you can't break up the Lowry line because they're just so dominant. We're way past
Nino
that.
has to be in the top 6.
Yeah.
Actually, not like he's on the third line, but they play him top 6 minutes. No, he has to be alongside. I honestly think you bump him up to play with Perfetti and Nemesnikov.
Yeah.
And then suddenly your top 2 lines again have a level of, play driving and a level of the ability to score. That's the thing. Perfetti, unreal facilitator. Nemesnikov holds it down defensively. Like he's still really good at that. And Nino gets to the areas you need him to get to. And I think that it's not ideal, but I think that works. I think I like what they've done with just moving Velarde up to the top line. Yeah. I think he's the best overall option for what you're looking for in terms of the ability to produce. And I actually think you're upgrading defensively there, where you're not going to be outscored, because Connor's always outscored, but he usually makes up for it with his ability to score in bunches. Also, this is totally off topic. This is really funny, but the fact that underneath Connor is a thing that says who replaces Connor. So yeah, we're taking auditions. Who's replacing Connor on the LFP?
Oh my god!
This should be the thumbnail of the episode. Just me like
who replaces Connor? No, but God. Like honestly, I truly think that you stick with what you've got now on the top line. We've got Velarde, Scheifele, Ehlers. Then you go Perfetti, Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, and then Barron, Lowry, Appleton, and then Iafallo, whoever, like Gustafson and whoever. And I'm going to quickly transition here. And I know, Connor, you tweeted this out last night. Alex Iafallo is invisible, and he has been for weeks. And he had time on the top line too when he actually he essentially all of his offense dried up. He's now working the top power play unit in Connor's spot.
Mm-hmm.
He can't be getting those minutes. I'm sorry. Like he's not what they're looking for, and they keep trying it. And I think that last night against the Sharks, having him as one of the rotating guys, I'm wondering if the coaching staff is finally seeing it. We'll find out if they go 12-6 where they put him. If they keep him on that fourth line, I think they finally said, okay, dude, you're not doing enough. But I don't trust that they won't. I have a feeling that we might see him on the second line again.
Yeah, it's really interesting because he played under 11 minutes last night in a game where it's tied. You know, you need your veteran players. Morgan Barron was up in the top 6, and Morgan Barron was fantastic. Like, I stand by that decision. Like that was a good promotion to put Barron up there. He was great. I follow 17 straight games without a goal, 12 straight without a point, and he played under 11 minutes last night in a game in the first night of a back-to-back when you go 11-7 and forward minutes should be inflated. He played
and
under 11
he's been playing
minutes.
Top power play that entire time. How do you not register a single point?
Yeah. He's not on the power play anymore. Because with Connor's injury, I believe they're Ehlers, Perfetti, Scheifele, Velarde, Morrissey. So I follow.
He was in that the circle. I at some point. I don't know if he was just out there longer, but he was in the right circle there where Connor usually. That's his office. And was just ripping shots wide, and his stick shattered. And I'm like, all right, great work.
Right. Yeah. That he might be the second unit guy there. Then maybe or maybe he was out longer. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, and it's one that I want to revisit next week because, like we said, Connor's out now. You need this veteran guy who you acquired in the offseason who's gone 17 straight games without a goal. And he's not a goal scorer. We know that. That's not the value he brings to the team. But right now, he's not bringing any value from that fourth line. So, I agree with you, Brian. Nino's got to move up. Iafallo has got to just be better. Got to provide more value to the lineup with Connor out. Elliott, I want to get your thoughts on this topic, but they called up Toninato, and I am of the mindset that calling up a Brad Lambert or a Nikita Chibrikov, I'm not here for that, especially Brad Lambert. People say Lambert, and Brad Lambert's a center now. People forget. They're developing him as a center. He's playing his first pro season as a center. Like, he is not the guy that you're calling up to replace a winger. That's for sure. He's a center now in the pipeline. You got to think of him as a center. Nikita Chibrikov, sure. If Kyle Connor's injury was or turns out to be season ending, I'll have more time for that conversation. But I just like Lucius is a center, Lambert's a center. Chibrikov is dominating the AHL. Let him stay. The Jets can weather the storm.
Full North American season. Like, let him continue to be comfortable.
And the Jets can weather the storm without Connor, I think. But Elliott, what are your thoughts on their decision to not call up one of their young prospects?
Yeah, we had this conversation, and I mentioned it when Velarde got hurt. We had this conversation over the summer with Murat Atesh just before the season started. And he said if there was a long-term injury to a player, he would be surprised if the Jets called up a skill guy. But my take is you only call up a skill player if that injury is season ending or like very long, like,
and you can give weeks. You can give them a month or two to get accustomed to the NHL level and then really hopefully hit the ground running in the back half of the year because they're young. Like, they've never played, Chibrikov's never played in the NHL. The notion that he's going to come up in the top 6 and just be a point per game player is just not true.
Yeah. That's not how this works. And for, like, I was all for, especially when the Velarde injury happened, for maybe calling somebody up. But after seeing these guys play well down with the Moose, and Lambert's had a slow start, but now he's picking it up. Chibrikov was off to a hot start. Lucius has been good, but he's also had issues with injuries. Like, he's been in and out of the lineup. So for me, at this stage of the game, you let those guys keep playing. And as much as it hurts, you kind of have to call up a guy like a Toninato or somebody of that nature. Now, obviously, like you said, Lambert he's a center now, but this lineup is so flexible. You can move guys around. Like, you can figure out how that works if he was to be your fourth line or third line center, or maybe he slots in the top six and Perfetti's on the wing, or whatever you want to do. But for the Jets right now, it's smart to keep your prospects in the minors. Because if you let's say this season doesn't go how you hope, and you either make the playoffs and you crash out, or this injury completely turns the season around and they're in the basement for the rest of the year, you want those players ready to go, let's say, for next season, right?
Yeah.
If a guy like Chibrikov, you look at and go, okay, I think he gets a shot in camp, he looks great, right? You don't want to stunt their development. You need to be looking towards the future, because as much as this team has shown that they are good this season, they have a good enough prospect pool to be good in the future as well, and you don't want to jeopardize that. Like, imagine let's say most of these guys that we just talked about hit their ceilings or get close to it, right? Like, how dangerous of a Jets team is that? Like, that's a fun Jets team. You don't want to jeopardize the future. And this organization has been very adamant about being a develop and play organization and looking towards the future and not trying to break anything up or screw things over for the future just to fix the now. So the call up for Toninato, I will say, I think is a current duct tape it up fix. A more permanent fix would be a trade. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next news that just broke last night during the Jets game against the Sharks.
I do just want to touch on this conversation, but we will get into Craig Berube being fired by the St. Louis Blues, who have had a rough start to the year, but I don't know what they expected. Anyways, this whole conversation, I love the point you brought up about the prospect pool and how next year, as early as next year, McGroarty, Chibrikov, and Lambert could all be ready for the NHL. They could. Like, it's unlikely. It might be the year after that. But McGroarty last year was great with Michigan. This year, before his injury, he was fantastic. Like, just miles better than he was last year, and he's on the right trajectory. Lambert, as a center, he's dominating down the AHL. He just scored an OT winner against the Wranglers. Shout out Dave Minuk of Illegal Curve for posting that clip, because it was a really nice goal. And then Chibrikov is a point-a-game player, and he might be able to snowball that into an NHL job as early as next year, and that would be like kind of found gold. You take all these first round forwards, and then a second round guy hits. That's pretty good. So I really wanted to echo that point, Elliott, that you brought up. The last thing I want to say on this is that I think they can weather the storm without Kyle Connor. And it's because of the way Rick Bowness plays. He likes to win every game 2-1, like I said. And if I follows up, providing defensive value, Niederreiter's up, I think they'll be just fine. But yeah, let's get into Craig Berube being let go by the St. Louis Blues. Brian, I know you had some thoughts on this. This is kind of just an NHL-wide topic, but Elliott brought up the potential of trade targets.
Yeah, I mean, the Blues they say they underperformed, but they really haven't. They're not that good of a team. But I honestly think that in several cases, teams just reach this point of shelf life with certain coaches, and they've been underwhelming for a few years now, ever since their cup win. So you're looking at a situation where it's just, I think the time ran out, and Craig Berube fired. But I honestly think, though, that whoever you bring in is not gonna, change the makeup of this team. And I honestly think that they might go full fire sale at some point, because they've got a lot of these guys, aging guys who aren't, they're not in the future plans, and they really do need some prospects still too. So I'm of the mindset, and I know a lot of other people are as well, that I've seen it everywhere. I think the Jets should give a little bit of a call on Pavel Buchnevich. He's a left winger, so you're looking at someone who could step in, and not necessarily directly in the Kyle Connor role, but someone who adds a level of depth down further in the lineup, and he'll actually give you a decent amount on both sides of the puck. Yes. He over his career has been a solid scorer, a solid play driver, and he's also not bad on the defensive side. And like essentially for the last 3 years ish, he's been at or above a point per game. He's got 21 points this season in 26 games, so he's producing on a bad team. I think that at this point, Doug Armstrong doesn't seem to have a clue what he's doing in St. Louis, so you could possibly leverage the situation here. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a great option to look at if you're possibly looking to, fill the gap via trade.
I 100% agree. And I also think that Pavel Buchnevich, like, I don't know what his perceived value is, but Nino Niederreiter has been a player that has had great analytics throughout his entire career, and is a consistent 20 goal scorer, and the Jets got him for a 2.
Yeah.
Would you have to give up a 1 for Buchnevich? Maybe. Maybe like a 1 and a prospect, or maybe even more. Maybe I'm way off on what his perceived like market value is. But if Cheveldayoff is able to pull off like a sneaky 2 2s for Pavel Buchnevich kind of deal, or something like the Niederreiter deal, which is just like a screaming value, I think that would be fantastic. And does he have 1 year left on his contract, or does he have term?
I'm going to check that right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if he has term.
Because we know Cheveldayoff loves term, but I do know that he acquired Niederreiter with 1 extra year.
Here. So, sorry to cut you off.
No,
you are exactly correct. Pavel Buchnevich is under contract for this season and then the following season, and then it is a UFA in 25-26.
So that is just money. Absolute money for what Cheveldayoff wants. That's exactly like the Nino Niederreiter.
But it's quite a steep price.
It is.
And he does have a modified no trade.
Yes,
modified no trade.
He has a modified no trade, and he's making 5.8, which I think would be interesting for the Jets to try to move cap space. Like with need to I'm going to counter both of your. As much as I love this move and I want the Jets to make this move, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and spin the other side of this. 5.8 is quite a large contract. So you would have to move one of the players, I think, that would have to be in that deal, because it would have to be NHL player for NHL player. I think that this is where Nate Schmidt probably comes into play. He would have to be, like, I think it would have to be a draft pick and Nate Schmidt, and potentially a prospect, depending on what St. Louis's value is for him. Level of prospect at that point could probably be a C-level prospect, especially if you're throwing in Nate Schmidt and a higher draft pick. It would just probably have to be some sort of throw-in. But to be devil's advocate, that $5.8 million is quite a bit. That's a large contract to try. I know the Jets can probably. All these NHL teams have finance people. They can probably make the money work. They can. We've seen what the Leafs have done with trying to spin guys and do this and that, and throw random money here. And
well, I mean, there's also like the LTIR conversation with Connor too. Like, if you're bringing in a guy to work sort of in his absence, the easiest direction there is to work with the LTIR money and then see if you can move, one of your big money defensemen. And like, to be honest with you, I'm 100% willing to sweeten the cost if it means a little bit unjamming the logjam in that defensive.
100%.
Listen, Nate Schmidt has honestly not been bad this year. Clearly, the organization though has kind of deemed that he is the one that probably would be moved. But I think that if you manage to have some sort of cap dump plus getting Buchnevich, I would be totally fine with bumping up the cost a little, because that benefits 2 different areas there.
My only other sorry, no, you the last thing I will say, the only thing, and this is very old school, that I know that someone like Cheveldayoff will take into consideration, and the Blues, I also believe that the cost for Buchnevich might be a little bit more with the Jets being in the same division as the Blues. I know that is so old school and lots of people hate that. But
same GMs though as the Stastny deal, so it's like
Well, there's that. Nino was moving from the Predators to the Jets, where I actually think that as much as that 2 was a steal, I think that was probably a higher price than what was being offered to other teams, I would assume, because it's an in-division thing. I know lots of people hate that, but there's always that, oh, but what if you trade a prospect and they turn out, or this player does it? There's that whole story, and I hate doing that, but it's just something that may come up in conversation between the GMs of, well, you're in my division. If we're competing in the next year or two and you sign him, then we got to play him, and we don't like that. And there's that whole conversation too. So that might slow things down a little bit and might bump the price up, but I really don't think it's going to bump the price up enough for it to really do anything for the Jets to actually not consider this. I would hope.
And I think on paper, it's a great acquisition. Like it would be. I mean, they haven't traded for him. But you know, his analytics are great. Brian said 21 points this year already. It would be an immediate upgrade to this forward group. I do the modified no trade clause. You're hoping for a Paul Stastny type situation where the Blues are bad enough and the Jets are good enough, where Buchnevich just goes, okay, whatever, I'm going to a contender. I'll take, because I like, you see no trade clause, Winnipeg's on the list. Like it's just,
he played in New York as well. Like, I'm sorry, like, are you gonna want to, because that's the thing, you're going down here where it's, you go New York City, St. Louis, Missouri, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Like, that's the thing. Like, at least with Stastny, he went Denver to to St. Louis, and then up, but then then again he went to Vegas and after, and then came back, so it says a lot. But still,
I think some players just care more about winning rather than whatever. Like Nino loves Winnipeg, and he signed here because he loves the team, and they're going to be a playoff team for the next 3 years. And
hopefully,
there you go. But again, on paper, great acquisition. You're hoping for a Stastny situation where he would waive his no trade clause, especially if the Blues are clearly rebuilding. And he might be one of the top guys on the trade target list, along with like an Elias Lindholm, Chris Tanev. I also do worry about creating a logjam at forward, because if Rutger McGroarty really is ready next year, it becomes a conversation of where does he slot in? Because with a fully healthy lineup, you're either moving Perfetti out, you're either moving Velarde out. That's if Buchnevich is here. I mean, you're moving an Ehlers out. It's because, or McGroarty's a third line guy, and he's alongside Adam Lowry with maybe Lowry and Iafallo, or Niederreiter, or whatever the case may be. But I do worry about that a little bit, especially with these guys looking more and more NHL ready by the game, by the season. They're developing, they're getting there. But yeah, those are my concerns. But on paper, I really like it. He great analytics, puts up points, big body. In division trade, like Elliott said, makes it a little bit more concerning. But we'll keep an eye on it. If the Blues continue to struggle, it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we get on out of here?
I think we've kind of covered it all.
All right, let's get out of here. Come back next week for episode 59. And stay tuned over the next couple of days. We might release something on the Kings game specifically, just like a 10-minute little initial reaction to what happened. So stay tuned for that. That might be coming to you Friday. We will let you know on our socials at Level Flight WPG. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week. See you.
Peace.